Hey everyone, we're back and we're addressing the issue of ultimate concern. We said that love of family is ultimate concern, but yet how can we leave out God in that? And so I want to address that issue. And I don't normally roll out Bible verses. I feel that young people, particularly, feel like that's kind of coming at them too much by using that as proof of anything. But there's just this one time that I'm going to do that, and I think it maybe helps to clarify that understanding of what God is, and it's going to take some explaining, but we're going to get there, right? So the idea of love of family, if that is our ultimate concern, and this family is kind of like something where people come in and out, so that never goes away, right? That family will always be sustained. It's just who's whoever's in there, right? My family right now is my wife and my children, right? And those people were not in my life when I was 10. Those would be my brother and my sister and my parents and my aunts and uncles and my grandparents. Those are very different people than are in my circle right now. And they're very different from the people that were in my life in college, right? Those friends and those people who were there for me and were maternal figures and fatherly figures who weren't my mom and dad. So it changes all the time. So, but this love that binds me to the people around me is that key. And going to this Bible verse, which you've already probably read the whole slide here, that God is love. That comes from the New Testament. And if we use our mathematical minds and place an equal sign where the is, then we see that God is love. And that means that every time we are talking about love, then we in essence are we aren't leaving God out of it. That is what God is. It's not that God gives love. It's not that God allows us to love. It's that God is love, right? It means that where one finds love, one finds God. In our last presentation on spirituality, we established the supremacy of love as the greatest, most permanent force in the world. And that makes sense that if we're going to say that that's God, then that makes sense that God is the supreme, most permanent force in the world. This is where we can bring together people of all faiths or no faiths. It doesn't matter whether or not we use the word God or whether or not we use the word love. Both are equally correct when we're addressing those things. And would it matter if I strove for God in all things and somebody next to me, and one of my atheist friends, strove for love in all things? We be striving for the same thing based on this particular Bible passage. And this is where I think we can all come together. If we can view God and love in the same way, then we should be able to be comfortable with that and not like force that on folks, right? If say somebody was a Spanish speaker were to walk into our room and be like, "Hola, cómo estás?" Right? Like we kind of know that. We know that they're saying hello. We wouldn't say, "I'm sorry, it's not hola, it's hello." Like we wouldn't like go out of our way. We would just like, "Oh yeah, hi," because we would understand that they were using a different words. We were using different language, and so whether or not a religious person says like, "I strive for God in my life every day," or somebody who is an atheist or somebody who is not religious saying, "I strive for love in my life every day," like what is the difference there? I don't see any. All right, next slide. More on this. Right above me, I've got this quote here next to the God is love quote from Victor Hugo in Les Mis and Les Miserables, and it's the closing line of the musical as well. If anybody's into musicals, in my opinion, it's the greatest musical that's ever been made. To love another person is to see the face of God. So if you're looking for God, what does it mean? It means to go and love another person. Go connect to other people and you will see God. That is what God is. I'm sorry if people are looking for miracles, signs out of the sky, but God doesn't work that way. God works in the way of just being where we are. Um, let's see. So a Christian striving for God and atheist striving for love would be actually seeking the same thing. God is everywhere. People say that, and it's nebulous and it's very difficult to understand. I can't even say that I do. But if you were to say somebody, well, love is everywhere, that's still kind of nebulous. But I think most people who have experienced love would be able to make more sense of that phrase. Well, love is everywhere. Um, and God must be understood in that same way. God is not something very distant. Um, it's very much tied to our present experiences. In the same way, love is tied to our present experiences. In striving for love, a person is acting religiously, even if they don't want to admit it. We said that before. All right. Ultimate atheism. No one is really a pure atheist because atheism is not the lack of an ultimate concern, right? Universal concern, ultimate concern is a universal human experience. Everyone has a top priority in their lives, even if it's not religious at all. And even if you don't admit it. So atheism is only a rejection of an objectifiable God. And there are a variety of atheists. Some don't believe in the Judeo Christian God, others don't believe in the Hindu gods. I don't. And so, in some senses, I'm atheistic, right? Um, all of us are atheists in some way. No one believes in all of them. The very act of believing in one God usually necessitates the disbelief in others. But everyone has God, according to Tillich. If we use the word to mean ultimate concern, then it means that we all have something that is going to provide us with the ultimate meaning in our lives. Now, I want to give you an analogy that I really love. It's kind of fun. So we'll see if we can work this out. Here you got Grandma and little Jimmy over here, and Grandma's put in charge of little Jimmy at her granddaughter's wedding. Right, a separate. It's not Jimmy's mom. So Jimmy's excited about being the at this wedding. He's super excited, right? And everything's fun. Everybody's dressed up real nice, and there's got to be cake, right? And so Jimmy is excited. Doesn't he look excited? But Grandma is crying. So they're sitting there, and things are going. The ceremony's going on, and the vows are being done. And Jimmy's sitting there, and he's being a good boy, and he's sitting by Grandma. And Jimmy looks up at Grandma, and he sees that Grandma's crying. Now, Grandma's remembering her wedding day long ago. Maybe her husband died last year, and she looks at her granddaughter and the dress and how happy she is, and it brings her tears, right? Now, Jimmy looks up at Grandma and says, "Why are you crying? Why are you sad?" Right? Nothing about this day is sad to Jimmy. And yet he looks at Grandma and sees her crying. Love is something experienced, right? And Grandma responds with, "I'm not sad, sweetie. I'm happy because you can see how much they love you, how much love is here." Now, Jimmy doesn't get it. Jimmy doesn't understand, right? He hasn't had that kind of love. Now, of course, he's been loved by his mom and dad and grandma and whatever, but not the love that is making Grandma cry. And love is something experienced. If you've experienced it, no one can tell you that you didn't. It's not Jimmy's fault that he doesn't see it, right? He's too young, or he has never come into contact with that. But he has no right to tell Grandma that what she's experiencing is wrong because she has lived it, she has experienced it. And folks, this is like God. God is something experienced by some and not others, right? Some people have not had that experience, and other people have definitely had this personal experience of God in their life, an experience of love in their life. And there's no judgment on anyone who hasn't experienced God and doesn't understand it. It's not like they're lesser or something like that. No. In the same way it's not Jimmy's fault he hasn't like been older. But those folks who have not had personal religious experiences, haven't had experiences of God in that way, they don't have a right to tell people who have had religious experiences or believe in God because they've experienced God. They don't have a right to tell people that they haven't had those experiences. So in striving,